I still remember the exact moment when Ryan's face appeared on my phone screen. I was sitting in my corner office, reviewing titled documents when his desperate voicemail came through. "Allison, please. I need to talk to you." 6 months after he disappeared with my $90,000 and my dignity, he was now sobbing into my voicemail. What he did not know was that I had spent those 6 months methodically constructing his downfall. As a real estate attorney with 13 years of experience, I understood property law better than most, certainly better than a man who thought he could steal my dream home and my future. When I finally returned his call, my voice was honeyed with false forgiveness. "Of course we can meet, Ryan. I have some paperwork you might want to see first." I met Ryan Fletcher at a charity gala in downtown Boston 3 years ago. He was charming, with perfect teeth and a tailored suit that spoke of success. When he mentioned he worked in investment banking, I was impressed but not intimidated. After all, I had built my own successful career as a real estate attorney at Johnston Blackwell, one of the most prestigious firms in Massachusetts. "A lawyer, huh?" he had said, swirling his whiskey. "I bet you are terrifying in a courtroom." I laughed. "I specialize in real estate law actually, less dramatic than criminal law, but I find property disputes fascinating in their own way." "A woman who understands the value of assets," he replied with a wink. "I think we are going to get along just fine." Our relationship progressed quickly. By our third date, I was already imagining a future with him. By 6 months, we were discussing marriage. At the 1-year mark, he proposed on the harbor at sunset with a 2-carat diamond ring that caught the dying light. I said yes without hesitation. "You are everything I have ever wanted," Ryan whispered against my hair. "Smart, beautiful, and ambitious. We are going to build an amazing life together." The search for our first home began shortly after the engagement. We spent weekends driving through neighborhoods, discussing our future children and the lives we would build. Eventually, we found a stunning colonial in Brookline with a wraparound porch and mature maple trees in the front yard. The moment we walked through the door, I knew it was meant to be ours. The hardwood floors gleamed in the afternoon light, and the kitchen had the marble countertops I had always dreamed about. "This is it?" I said, squeezing Ryan's hand. "This feels like home." The asking price was $750,000, steep, but manageable with our combined incomes. We would need a substantial down payment, though. I had been saving aggressively for years and had accumulated just over $90,000 in my personal savings account. Ryan claimed to have about the same, though I noticed he always seemed reluctant to show me specific account statements. "We should put down 20%, I suggested one evening as we reviewed our finances. "That would be $150,000 between us." Ryan nodded, then hesitated. "Actually, I have been talking to my financial advisor. He thinks we could save significantly on taxes if we structure the down payment differently." "What do you mean?" I asked, immediately curious. As an attorney, I was always interested in legitimate tax strategies. "If we put the down payment in my name only, we could potentially write off more of the mortgage interest. Plus, there are some investment vehicles I have access to through my firm that could make this advantageous for both of us." He reached for my hand. "It is just a paper arrangement, Al. The house will be ours together." I frowned. Something felt off about the suggestion. That does not sound right to me. The mortgage interest deduction would apply regardless of whose name is on the deed. Ryan's expression shifted, almost imperceptibly. "There are other considerations too. My bonus structure this year is complicated, and this could help with tax liability." He ran his fingers through his hair, a gesture I had come to recognize as his tell when he was feeling pressured. "Look, I would not suggest this if I did not think it was best for our future. Trust me on this one." Trust. Such a simple word with such profound implications. I did trust him. I loved him. And despite my professional knowledge setting off fatal alarm bells, I convinced myself that Ryan's financial expertise in investment banking gave him insights I might not have. "Okay," I finally agreed. "But I want us to add my name to the deed right after the wedding. We will only be waiting a few months anyway." "Of course," he said, kissing me softly. "Whatever makes you comfortable. This is our home, regardless of whose name is temporarily on the paperwork." The next day, I transferred $90,000 to Ryan's account. He combined it with what he claimed was $60,000 of his own money for the down payment. The closing was scheduled for the following week, just 2 months before our wedding. The process went smoothly, too smoothly in retrospect. Ryan insisted on handling most of the paperwork himself, claiming he wanted to spare me the stress while I was busy with wedding planning. I still showed up at the closing, of course I could not help myself. But I allowed Ryan to take the lead, signing where the closing attorney indicated without scrutinizing the documents as carefully as I would have for a client. When it was done, Ryan held up the keys triumphantly. "To our future," he said, and I felt a surge of excitement despite the lingering unease that had settled in my stomach. We began moving, and immediately I threw myself into decorating, choosing paint colors and furniture, imagining the life we would build in these rooms. Ryan seemed distracted, often working late and traveling more frequently for client meetings. I attributed his absence to work stress and the natural anxiety that comes with major life changes. The wedding was now just 2 weeks away. My dress hung in my sister's closet. My vows were written, and the caterer had confirmed our final head count. Everything was falling into place except for Ryan's increasingly strange behavior. "Is everything okay?" I asked one night as we lay in bed, the space between us feeling wider than ever. "Just work stress," he muttered, not meeting my eyes. "Big client presentation coming up." The next morning he was gone before I woke up. His note said he was flying to Chicago for an emergency client meeting and would be back in 3 days. He did not answer my calls that evening, which was unusual but not unprecedented when he was with important clients. 3 days passed with no word from Ryan. Then 5, then 7. Panic set in as I called his office only to discover that there had been no client meeting in Chicago. In fact, according to his confused assistant, Ryan had requested 2 weeks of personal leave. By the time I was supposed to be having my final dress fitting, I was instead filing a missing persons report with the local police. They took my statement with professional sympathy, but I could see the skepticism in their eyes. A man disappearing right before his wedding was not unheard of. "Have you checked your joint accounts, ma'am?" one officer asked Italy. We did not have joint accounts, yet another thing we had planned to address after the wedding, but when I checked my personal account, I discovered that Ryan had somehow gained access and emptied it entirely. $30,000, the remainder of my savings after the down payment gone. Numb with shock, I sat on our bedroom floor and tried to make sense of what was happening. Had Ryan been in an accident? Was he being held somewhere against his will? Or had he simply left? The answer came the following day when my maid of honor, Jennifer, called me, her voice tight with anger. "Allison, I need to show you something. Can I come over?" 30 minutes later, she was sitting beside me on the couch, her phone in her hand. "I am so sorry," she whispered, passing me the device. On the screen was a dating profile. Ryan's dating profile active as of 3 days prior. His smiling face looked back at me beneath a heading that read "Homeowner, financially secure, looking for adventure." The profile description was like a knife to my heart. Recently single professional seeking companionship. Proud homeowner in Brookline with a stable career in finance. Looking for someone who appreciates the finer things in life. The room seemed to tilt around me. "This cannot be real," I whispered, though I knew it was. The profile picture had been taken just last month, during a weekend trip to Cape Cod. I had been the one to take it. "There is more," Jennifer said softly. "He has been active on this app for months, Allison, even before you found the house." As the truth settled over me like a suffocating blanket, my shock gave way to something else. Raw, searing anger. This man had not only stolen my money and my dreams, but had been deliberately planning to do so for months. And now he was flaunting his new status as a homeowner with a house that my money had purchased. I spent the next day in a daze, canceling wedding arrangements and returning what gifts had already arrived. My parents flew in from Phoenix to be with me, their fury at Ryan matching my own. My father, a retired judge, wanted to go to the police immediately. "This is fraud, Allison," he insisted, plain and simple. But I knew the reality was more complicated. I had willingly transferred the money to Ryan. The house was legally in his name only, and without proof of his intent to defraud me, the authorities would likely view it as a relationship gone bad rather than a criminal matter. That night, alone in what should have been our bedroom, I stared at the ceiling and made a decision. Ryan had chosen the wrong woman to betray. He had forgotten or perhaps never fully appreciated that I was not just his fiancé. I was a real estate attorney with over a decade of experience navigating the complexities of property law. "You want to play games with property titles, Ryan?" I whispered into the darkness. "Let's play." The next morning, I walked into my firm with a determined stride that made heads turn. My eyes were swollen from crying, but my voice was steady as I requested a meeting with Victoria Johnston, the founding partner of our firm and my longtime mentor. "Allison," she said when I entered her office, "I thought you would be on pre-wedding leave by now. What brings you in?" I closed the door and sat across from her desk. "I need advice, Victoria, professional advice." Her expression grew serious as I laid out the entire situation: the $90,000, the house in Ryan's name, his disappearance, and the dating profile. By the time I finished, Victoria's lips had formed a thin, hard line. "What a despicable man," she said finally. "I am so sorry, Allison." "I do not want sympathy," I replied. "I want justice, and I need to know what my legal options are." Victoria leaned back in her chair, her mind already working through the possibilities. "Well, from a strictly legal perspective, you have a few potential avenues. You could sue for the return of your down payment money on the grounds of unjust enrichment or constructive trust. You contributed to the purchase with the understanding that you would have an ownership interest." "But that would be a lengthy process," I said, "and expensive." "Yes, and unfortunately, without documentation of your agreement, it could be challenging to prove. He could claim it was a gift." I felt sick at the thought. "What about the house itself? Do I have any claim to it?" Victoria tapped her pen against her desk thoughtfully. "That is more complicated. Without your name on the deed or mortgage, establishing a legal interest will be difficult." However, she paused, her eyes narrowing slightly. "There might be another approach." For the next hour, Victoria and I discussed strategies, examining Massachusetts property law from every angle. As we talked, a plan began to take shape, a plan that would require patience, precision, and a thorough understanding of the legal system. "Are you sure you want to pursue this?" Victoria asked as our meeting concluded. "It could be easier to simply write off the loss and move on with your life." I thought about the house, my dream home that Ryan now claimed as his exclusive property. I thought about the $90,000 I had saved over years of hard work. And I thought about the smug dating profile broadcasting his newfound status as a homeowner. "I am sure," I said firmly, "he chose the wrong woman to steal from." That afternoon, I began my research in earnest. I pulled every relevant statute, case law precedent, and legal commentary I could find related to property disputes between unmarried partners. I researched mechanics, liens, constructive trusts, and equitable remedies. I worked late into the night, fueled by a combination of legal determination and personal vendetta. While I built my legal strategy, I also began investigating Ryan more thoroughly. With the help of a private investigator recommended by a colleague, I uncovered a pattern of similar behavior. Ryan had apparently done this before, not the exact same scheme, but variations on the theme. 2 women in the past 5 years had filed complaints against him for financial manipulation. Though neither case had resulted in criminal charges, classic conman profile, the investigator told me, he targets successful, intelligent women who have both financial resources and emotional availability. The fact that you are a lawyer probably made you an even more attractive target, a bigger challenge with a bigger payoff. The knowledge that I was just one in a series of victims should have made me feel better, less personally foolish, but instead, it only fueled my determination. This was not just about me anymore, it was about stopping Ryan from doing this to anyone else. 3 weeks after Ryan's disappearance, I finally received a text message from him. "I'm sorry things didn't work out between us. I think it's best if we both move on. I'll have my lawyer contact you about any property disputes." The casual cruelty of the message left me breathless with rage. Things did not work out? As if our relationship had simply faded rather than him executing a calculated theft of my money and dreams. And the mention of property disputes made it clear that he anticipated I might fight for the house and that he was prepared to oppose me. What he was not prepared for, however, was the specific form my fight would take. My first move was subtle. Using my professional connections, I arranged for a title search on the property, confirming that Ryan had indeed registered it solely in his name. The mortgage was also in his name only, though I knew my money had contributed substantially to the down payment. Next, I examined the property's tax records and utility setups. Ryan had been prompt in establishing all services in his name: electricity, water, gas, internet. He had even filed for the residential tax exemption as his primary residence. He was thorough, I had to give him that. But his thoroughness worked in my favor. Every piece of documentation linking him firmly to the property created another point of leverage in my developing plan. The breakthrough came when I discovered that Ryan had hired a contractor to renovate the master bathroom just days after moving in, work that had been scheduled to begin the week after our wedding. The contractor, disappointed by the sudden cancellation, was quite willing to speak with me. Yeah, he was talking big plans for that bathroom. The contractor, Mike Delgado, told me over coffee. Marble shower, heated floors, the works. Must have been a $15,000 job, easy. He put down a $3,000 deposit, but then disappeared. Tried calling him for a week before I gave up and kept the deposit as a cancellation fee. Did he say anything about why he canceled? I asked casually. Mike shrugged. Just a text saying plans had changed and he was putting renovations on hold. Happens sometimes. People get in over their heads with house purchases. I nodded sympathetically, then leaned forward. Mike, would you be willing to provide me with the documentation of your agreement with Ryan? The initial contract, the deposit receipt, any communications you had. He looked confused but not suspicious. Sure, I guess, but why do you need it? Let's just say I have a professional interest in how Ryan conducts his business dealings, I replied with a smile that did not reach my eyes. The next day, I had copies of everything, including text messages in which Ryan specifically discussed the bathroom renovations as something we, meaning him and me, wanted completed before moving into the master bedroom after our honeymoon. It was not much, but it was something, documented evidence that the house had been purchased with the understanding that it would be a shared residence. More importantly, it gave me the opening I needed for the next phase of my plan. With Victoria's guidance and support from the firm, I drafted a series of legal documents. The first was a claim for unjust enrichment, detailing my financial contribution to the property. This was primarily a pressure tactic, a way to formally notify Ryan that I was not simply walking away. The second document was more strategic, a mechanic's lien against the property. While typically used by contractors who have not been paid for their work, there were creative legal arguments to be made about my contribution to the property's value. It was a stretch, legally speaking, but it would cloud the title and create immediate problems for Ryan if he tried to sell or refinance. The third document was the most important and the most legally complex. It was a petition for a constructive trust, arguing that Ryan had acquired the property through fraudulent means and was therefore holding it in trust for my benefit. This was an equitable remedy that, if granted by the court, could force Ryan to transfer partial or full ownership of the house to me. This is aggressive, Victoria warned as she reviewed my strategy, and not all of these approaches may succeed. The court might reject some or all of these claims. I understand, I replied, but even if they are ultimately dismissed, they will create immediate complications for Ryan. The house will be encumbered by legal claims that will show up in any title search. He will not be able to sell, refinance, or even take out a home equity loan without resolving these issues. Victoria smiled slightly. You are not just seeking justice, you are seeking to make his life difficult. I am seeking to make him understand that actions have consequences, I corrected, especially when you try to con a real estate attorney. The filings were submitted to the Suffolk County Courthouse the following week. I paid the extra fee for expedited processing, ensuring that the mechanic's lien would be recorded against the property within days rather than weeks. Then I waited. Ryan's response came more quickly than I had anticipated. Just 3 days after the filings, I received an email from an attorney named James Cabot identifying himself as Ryan's legal representative. My client has made me aware of your recent legal actions regarding the property at 287 Marlborough Street, the email began. While he acknowledges your previous relationship, he maintains that your financial contribution to the property was a gift, made without expectation of repayment or ownership interest. We are prepared to vigorously defend against what we view as meritless claims. I forwarded the email to Victoria with a single comment: Phase 1 complete. The fact that Ryan had retained counsel and presumably paid a retainer fee meant that my actions had hit their mark. He was taking the threat seriously, which was exactly what I wanted. Over the next several weeks, a formal legal battle began to take shape. Ryan's attorney filed motions to dismiss my claims, arguing that they lacked legal standing. Our firm responded with additional documentation and legal precedents supporting my position. Meanwhile, I continued my investigation into Ryan's background and finances. The private investigator uncovered several interesting details, including evidence that Ryan had been laid off from his investment banking position 3 months before our wedding. Right around the time he had suggested putting the house in his name only, he had been unemployed while pretending to go to work each day, while simultaneously planning his exit from our relationship. This discovery was both painful and useful. It suggested that Ryan's financial situation was likely precarious, which meant the pressure I was applying through the legal system would be even more effective. For months after Ryan's disappearance, my strategy began to bear fruit. Through court filings, I learned that he had attempted to refinance the mortgage to access the equity in the home, likely because he needed cash, but had been denied due to the legal encumbrance risks I had placed on the property. The mechanic's lien in particular, had raised red flags with potential lenders. Shortly afterward, Ryan's attorney reached out to propose a settlement discussion. I agreed to meet, but only after consulting with Victoria about our negotiating position. He is feeling the pressure, Victoria observed, but do not accept the first offer. Whatever he proposes, we push for more. The meeting took place in a conference room at our firm, a power move that put Ryan and his attorney on our territory. I dressed him accurately in my most expensive suit, determined to project confidence and control. When Ryan walked in, I was shocked by his appearance. The polished, confident man I had agreed to marry was gone, replaced by someone who looked stressed and disheveled. He had lost weight, and dark circles shadowed his eyes. He could barely meet my gaze as he took his seat across the table. His attorney, James Cabot, did most of the talking. My client recognizes that this situation has caused considerable distress, and he is willing to offer a good faith settlement to resolve all outstanding issues. We are listening, Victoria replied coolly. Mr. Fletcher is prepared to repay 50% of Ms. Harrison's contribution to the down payment, $45,000 over a period of 18 months. In exchange, Ms. Harrison would remove all liens and legal claims against the property. I almost laughed out loud at the audacity. He was offering to return half of what he had stolen from me on an extended payment plan while keeping the house. Victoria and I exchanged glances before she responded. That proposal is entirely inadequate. Ms. Harrison contributed $90,000 to the purchase of a property that has already appreciated in value. Furthermore, your client's actions constitute fraud and breach of fiduciary duty. We will accept nothing less than full repayment of the $90,000 plus legal fees and compensatory damages for emotional distress. Ryan shifted uncomfortably in his seat. I do not have that kind of money right now, he muttered the first words he had spoken since entering the room. That is not Miss Harrison's problem, Victoria replied. Perhaps you should consider selling the house you purchased with her money. Ryan's face darkened. That house is mine. I am the one making the mortgage payments. With what income? I asked, speaking directly to him for the first time. We know you were laid off months ago, Ryan. How long can you keep up those payments? The flash of panic in his eyes confirmed that my investigator's information had been correct. Ryan looked to his attorney, who quickly intervened. My client's employment status is not relevant to these proceedings. The fact remains that he is the legal owner of the property. For now, I said quietly. But as you well know, the constructive trust petition, if granted, could change that. And in the meantime, the existing liens make the property essentially frozen as an asset. The meeting ended without resolution, but I left feeling confident. Ryan was clearly struggling financially, and the pressure would only increase as the legal proceedings continued. It was just a matter of time before he would be forced to capitulate or risk losing everything. As the legal battle stretched into its 5th month, Ryan attempted a new strategy. Rather than continuing to fight through legal channels, he began reaching out to me directly, circumventing his attorney. First came text messages expressing vague regret about how things ended. When I did not respond, he escalated to voicemails with increasingly desperate tones. Allison, please. One message began, I know I made a mistake. I was in a bad place financially and made a terrible decision, but I never meant to hurt you like this. Can we talk? Person to person, not through lawyers? I played the message for Victoria during our weekly strategy meeting. He is trying to appeal to your emotions, she observed, to remind you of your personal connection and bypass the legal proceedings. It will not work, I said firmly. I am long past feeling anything for him except contempt. But Ryan was persistent. When his direct appeals failed, he began contacting mutual friends, painting himself as remorseful and reformed. Several well-meaning friends reached out to suggest I give him a chance to explain and to make amends. He seems genuinely sorry, Allison, my friend Beth told me over lunch. He told Jason that he panicked when he lost his job and made the worst mistake of his life. He says he will do anything to make it right. If he wants to make it right, he can agree to our settlement terms, I replied evenly. This is not about forgiveness, Beth. It is about justice and consequences. Ryan's next move was more calculated. He sent me an email outlining a new settlement proposal, one that appeared more generous on the surface. He offered to repay the full $90,000 over 12 months and to add my name to the deed as a 49% owner. I know I can never undo the hurt I caused, he wrote, but I want to try to make amends. The house was meant to be ours together, and I want to honor that original intention. I forwarded the email to Victoria with my thoughts. He is still trying to maintain control. Notice that he offers less than 50% ownership, keeping the majority share for himself. And a 12-month payment plan means he keeps control of my money for another year. Victoria agreed. It is a better offer but still inadequate. And you are right about his motivations. This is about maintaining control while appearing to be reasonable. We responded with a counter offer: immediate repayment of the $90,000 plus $30,000 in damages or transfer of the entire property to my name, with Ryan receiving a payment equal to his actual contribution to the down payment minus damages. His attorney rejected our counter offer within hours. The next twist came unexpectedly. One evening, as I was working late at the office, the receptionist called to inform me that Ryan was in the lobby, insisting on speaking with me. He does not have an appointment, she said, but he seems quite agitated. Security is standing by. My heart raced as I considered my options. I had not seen Ryan in person since that settlement meeting months ago. Tell him I will come down, I decided, but I will only speak with him in the lobby, with security present. When I stepped off the elevator, Ryan was pacing near the reception desk, his appearance even more disheveled than before. He looked up as I approached, his expression a mixture of desperation and hope. "Allison," he said, stepping toward me before noticing the security guard watching closely. "Thank you for seeing me. What do you want, Ryan?" I asked coldly. "I need to explain," he said, lowering his voice. "Not through lawyers or emails. Just us talking, like we used to." He gestured toward the doors. "Can we go somewhere and talk, please?" "No," I replied firmly. "Whatever you have to say, you can say it here." His face fell, but he nodded. "Okay, look, I know I messed up badly. I lost my job and panicked. I was too ashamed to tell you. And then I got this idea that if I had the house in my name, I could at least have something to show for myself while I looked for work." "So you stole my money," I said flatly. He flinched. "I did not think of it that way at the time. I told myself I would add you to the deed after we were married, that it was just a temporary arrangement." "Then why did you leave?" I pressed. "Why empty my personal account on your way out?" Ryan looked down, his shoulders slumping. "I got scared. The wedding was coming up, and I still did not have a job. I knew you would find out eventually, and I could not face your disappointment." "The money from your account," he hesitated. "That was inexcusable." I was desperate and not thinking clearly. "And the dating profile?" I asked, my voice sharp. "The one bragging about being a homeowner and financially secure? Was that also because you were not thinking clearly?" He had the decency to look ashamed. "I created that profile when I was at my lowest. I was trying to feel like I still had some value, some status." It was pathetic and drawn. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Then I remembered the weeks of pain, the betrayal, the calculated way he had manipulated me. "What do you want from me, Ryan?" I asked again. "I want to make this right," he said earnestly. "I will sign whatever you want. Add you to the deed, give you back the money. Anything?" I studied his face, looking for signs of deception. "Why now? What has changed?" He hesitated before answering. "I cannot sell the house because of your liens. I cannot refinance, and I am 3 months behind on the mortgage. The bank is threatening foreclosure." And there it was, the real reason for his sudden remorse. Not guilt, not genuine regret, but financial desperation. "So you need me to remove the liens so you can sell the house before you lose it to foreclosure," I summarized. "It is not just that," he protested weakly. "I do regret what I did to you." "Send a formal settlement offer through your attorney," I said, turning to leave. "Or your ex-attorney, if you can no longer afford his services. My terms have not changed." As I walked back to the elevator, Ryan called after me. "Allison, please, I am going to lose everything." I turned back briefly. "Yes," I agreed calmly, "you are." The following week, we received notice that Ryan had indeed missed several mortgage payments and that foreclosure proceedings were being initiated by the lender. This development significantly strengthened my position. If the property went into foreclosure, my claims against it would likely be subordinate to the mortgage lender's interests, meaning I could lose my chance at recovery. Victoria and I quickly developed a new strategy. We approached the mortgage lender directly, explaining the situation and expressing interest in potentially purchasing the mortgage note. This was an unusual move, but given my firm's connections in the banking industry, we were able to at least start the conversation. Meanwhile, Ryan became increasingly desperate. He began calling multiple times a day, leaving increasingly incoherent messages about his dire financial situation and his genuine remorse. When I continued to ignore him, he escalated to showing up at my apartment building, prompting me to file for a restraining order. The restraining order hearing brought us face to face once again. Ryan looked terrible unshaven, wearing wrinkled clothes, with the haunted look of someone who had not slept in days. As the judge reviewed my petition, Ryan's eyes never left my face, silently pleading. "Your Honor," his newly appointed public defender argued, "Mr. Fletcher has no intention of harming Ms. Harrison. He is simply trying to resolve a complex property dispute and believes direct communication would be more effective than continued legal proceedings." By showing up uninvited at her residence at 11 at night, the judge asked skeptically, "By leaving dozens of voicemails after being explicitly asked to communicate only through counsel?" The judge granted the restraining order, prohibiting Ryan from coming within 100 yards of my home or workplace for 6 months. As he left the courtroom, Ryan's defeated posture gave me no satisfaction. This had never been about making him suffer, it had been about justice and accountability. The next development took me completely by surprise. One morning, Ethan tried herself out as a voice actor. I received an email from a woman named Danielle Reeves, with the subject line, "Ryan Fletcher, you are not alone. I recently discovered your legal filings against Ryan Fletcher." The email began, "I believe we have had similar experiences with this man. 2 years ago, he convinced me to invest $60,000 in what he claimed was a promising startup company. The company did not exist. When I threatened legal action, he disappeared. I have since learned there are at least 3 other women with similar stories." My hand shook as I read the email. I had suspected Ryan had done this before, but here was concrete evidence and the possibility of additional allies. I replied immediately, suggesting we meet. 2 days later, I sat across from Danielle in a quiet cafe, listening as she detailed her experience with Ryan. "He was so convincing," she said, twisting her napkin between her fingers. "He had documentation, a business plan, even a website for the company. I am not stupid, I work in finance myself. But he had an answer for every question, a solution for every concern. That is his talent," I agreed. "Making you feel like you are making a smart, informed decision even as he manipulates you." Danielle nodded. "After he disappeared with my money, I hired a private investigator. That is how I found the others. There is a woman in Chicago, another in Philadelphia, and one in Washington, D.C. Different schemes, but the same pattern of gaining trust, taking money, and vanishing." "Have any of them pursued legal action?" I asked. "The woman in Chicago tried, but without success. The others felt too embarrassed or did not have the resources. When I saw your filings, I was impressed. You have gone further than any of us in holding him accountable." By the end of our meeting, Danielle and I had agreed to share information and resources. She would connect me with the other victims, and I would keep her updated on my legal strategy. The knowledge that I was part of a larger group of women fighting back against Ryan's predatory behavior gave me renewed determination. Armed with statements from Ryan's previous victims, I amended my legal filings to include evidence of a pattern of fraudulent behavior. This significantly strengthened my constructive trust petition, as it established that Ryan's actions toward me were not a one-time mistake but part of a deliberate recurring scheme. 6 months to the day after Ryan had disappeared with my money, the pressure finally broke him. His mortgage lender initiated formal foreclosure proceedings, filing the necessary paperwork to take possession of the house. Simultaneously, one of Ryan's previous victims filed a police report in Chicago, prompting a fraud investigation that quickly expanded to include his activities in multiple states. That evening, my phone rang with a number I did not recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Allison," Ryan's voice was hoarse, barely recognizable. "They're taking the house. Everything is falling apart. Please, I am begging you, help me fix this." "Where are you, Ryan?" I asked calmly. "At a motel off Highway 9, he replied. "I had to move out of the house last week. I have nowhere else to go." I closed my eyes, feeling a complex mix of emotion, satisfaction that justice was being served, but also a strange, hollow sadness for the relationship I had once believed in. "I will meet you tomorrow," I said finally. 1 o'clock at the Johnston Blackwell offices. "Bring whatever documentation you have regarding the house and the mortgage." "Thank you," he breathed, relief evident in his voice. "Thank you, Allison. You will not regret this." As I hung up, I knew this meeting would mark the beginning of this chapter in my life. One way or another, I would finally achieve the resolution I had been working toward for 6 long months. The conference room at Johnston Blackwell was deliberately intimidating, all dark wooden leather chairs, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Boston skyline. I arrived 30 minutes early to prepare, arranging my documents in precise order and consulting briefly with Victoria about our approach. "Are you sure you want to do this?" she asked, studying my face. "We could send an associate in your place." "No," I replied firmly. "I need to see this through personally." Ryan arrived precisely at 1 o'clock, escorted by the receptionist. He looked marginally better than he had at the restraining order, hearing cleanly shaved and wearing a pressed shirt, though it hung loosely on his thinner frame. His eyes darted nervously around the room before settling on me. "Sit down," I said, gesturing to the chair across from me. He complied without a word, placing a worn leather portfolio on the table between us. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence stretched, heavy with unspoken accusations and regrets. "Thank you for agreeing to meet," Ryan finally said, his voice subdued. "I know I have no right to ask for your help." "You do not," I agreed coolly. "But I am curious to hear what you are proposing." He opened the portfolio and removed several documents. "I have been in contact with the mortgage lender. They are willing to halt the foreclosure proceedings if I can bring the account current and provide evidence of stable income going forward." He slid a letter across the table. "I have a job offer from a financial services firm in Hartford. It is not investment banking, but it is a steady position with a reasonable salary." I glanced at the letter. The position was indeed legitimate, though the salary was considerably lower than what Ryan had claimed to be making when we were together. "And how do you plan to bring the mortgage current?" I asked. "You are several months behind, correct?" Ryan hesitated. "That is where I was hoping. Where I was wondering if you might consider." "You want me to pay off your delinquent mortgage payments," I stated flatly. "Not as a gift," he quickly clarified. "As an investment. If you help me save the house, I will add your name to the deed immediately, 50-50 ownership. We could sell it once the market improves and split the proceeds." I leaned back in my chair, studying him. There was a time when I had found his features handsome, his manner charming. Now I saw only desperation and calculation. "Let me be sure I understand," I said slowly. "You want me to invest more money on top of the $90,000 you already took to save a house that should have been partly mine to begin with. And in exchange, you will graciously grant me half ownership of the property." Ryan winced at my phrasing but nodded. "I know how it sounds, but it is the only way I can think of to make things right. We both get what we wanted originally, a valuable property that will appreciate over time. Except now we would be business partners rather than spouses," I observed. "Bound together by a shared asset for years to come. It would not have to be awkward," he insisted. "We could have a formal agreement, managed by attorneys. Minimal contact required." I allowed myself a small smile. "And what about the other women?" "Ryan?" He froze. "What other women?" "Danielle Reeves," I said, watching his face carefully. "Catherine Donovan from Chicago. Elizabeth Wellen from Philadelphia. Sarah Chen from Washington, D.C. Should I continue? The color drained from Ryan's face. "How did you find them?" "They found me, actually. It seems you have a pattern of targeting successful, intelligent women and relieving them of their savings through various creative schemes." Ryan's hands began to tremble slightly. "Those were different situations, different misunderstandings." "Stop," I interrupted sharply. "No more lies, Ryan. We both know exactly what you did to me and to them. The only difference is that they did not have the legal resources to fight back effectively. I do." I opened my own folder and removed a stack of papers, sliding them across the table. "This is my counter-offer. The only offer I will make." Ryan hesitantly picked up the documents, scanning the first page with growing confusion. "I do not understand. This says you will purchase the mortgage note from the lender and then offer you a choice." I completed for him. "Option 1, I foreclose on the property immediately, taking possession through legal channels. You receive nothing and face potential criminal charges for fraud based on the collective evidence from multiple victims." Ryan swallowed hard. "And option 2? "Option 2, you sign the house over to me entirely. I assume the mortgage and take full ownership. In exchange, I will pay you $20,000, the approximate difference between the down payment you actually contributed and the current equity in the home." $20,000? "Zion," Ryan repeated incredulously. The house is worth precisely what I say it is worth," I interrupted coldly, "because I control whether you walk away with something or nothing, and whether you walk away free or facing criminal charges." Ryan stared at me, shock giving way to understanding as he grasped the completeness of his defeat. For months, he had been viewing our conflict as a negotiation, a business dispute that could be resolved through compromise. He now realized it had never been that. It had been a carefully executed plan to back him into exactly this corner. "This is blackmail," he finally said, though there was no force behind the accusation. "No, Ryan, this is consequences. Something you have managed to avoid for far too long." I slid a pen across the table. "You have 24 hours to decide. The documents are already prepared for either scenario." Ryan looked down at the papers, then back at me. For a moment, I glimpsed the charming man who had once proposed to me on the harbor at sunset, a flicker of the confidence and charisma that had drawn me to him. "You never needed me to teach you about property investment, did you?" he asked quietly. "You were always the smarter one." "Yes," I agreed simply. "I was." After Ryan left, Victoria joined me in the conference room. "How did it go?" "Exactly as expected," I replied, gathering my documents. "He will sign. He has no choice." Victoria nodded, then asked the question she had been delicately avoiding for months. "And after this is resolved, what then?" I looked out at the Boston skyline, considering. For so long, my focus had been on this legal battle, on achieving justice. I had poured all my energy into holding Ryan accountable. But once it was over, "I think I will sell the house," I said finally. "Too many bad memories. Use the proceeds to start fresh somewhere new." "And personally," Victoria pressed gently, "this experience would make anyone wary of trusting again." I turned back to her with a small smile. "I trusted the wrong person, yes. But I also trusted myself to make it right. That counts for something." The next day, Ryan returned to the office with the signed documents, choosing option 2. He avoided meeting my eyes as he slid the papers across the table, his signature clearly visible on the deed transfer. "The bank has been notified of the change in ownership," I informed him. "They will work with me directly from this point forward. Your $20,000 payment will be processed within 5 business days." Ryan nodded silently. As he turned to leave, I called after him. "Ryan." He paused, looking back at me with a mixture of shame and resignation. "The other women, Danielle, Catherine, Elizabeth, and Sarah, they have all been notified about this resolution. They know you are now essentially penniless, so pursuing their own claims would be pointless. Consider your debt to them rolled into what you owe me." Relief flickered across his face. "But," I continued, my voice hardening, "if I ever hear you attempting this scheme again with another woman, I will personally ensure that every legal authority from Boston to San Francisco knows your name and your methods. Do you understand?" "I understand," he replied quietly. "Good. Then our business is concluded." As the door closed behind him, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. 6 months of strategic legal maneuvering had culminated in this moment of justice. The house that should have been our shared dream was now mine alone, a symbol not of what I had lost, but of what I had reclaimed through my own expertise and determination. 2 weeks after finalizing the property transfer, I stood in the empty living room of what was now legally and entirely my house. The hardwood floors still gleamed in the afternoon light. The marble countertops in the kitchen still caught the sun just as they had when Ryan and I had first toured the property together. But the space felt different now, cleansed of false promises and imagined futures. I had already contacted a realtor about listing the property, deciding that a clean break would be best. The Boston real estate market was strong, and the house would likely sell quickly and profitably. As I walked through the rooms one last time, my phone rang. It was Danielle Reeves. "I just wanted to check in," she said when I answered. "How are you feeling now that it's over?" "Lighter," I replied honestly, "like I can finally move forward." "Have you heard anything more from him?" "No," I said, "and I don't expect to. He's learned his lesson, at least where I'm concerned." There was a pause before Danielle spoke again. "The other women and I have been talking. We're thinking of starting a support network for women who've been targeted by financial predators like Ryan. Not just emotional support, but practical advice on legal recourse, even if they don't have your advantages." I stopped in the middle of what would have been our dining room, considering her words. "That sounds incredibly valuable. We were hoping you might be willing to be involved. Maybe provide some basic legal guidance or review materials we develop. Your expertise would be invaluable." The request caught me by surprise. For months, my focus had been solely on my own justice, my own vindication. The idea of helping others navigate similar situations had not occurred to me. "I'd be honored," I found myself saying. "In fact, I might be able to do more than just review materials. My firm has a pro bono program that might be interested in partnering with something like this." "That would be amazing," Danielle replied, excitement evident in her voice. "I'll send you what we have so far. We're thinking of calling it Financial Defense Alliance, focusing specifically on relationship-based financial fraud. As we continued discussing possibilities, I wandered into the master bedroom, the room where Ryan and I would have slept as husband and wife. The space that would have witnessed our most intimate moments now felt like just another empty room, ready for new occupants and new stories. When I hung up with Danielle, I took one final walk through the house, making peace with what had happened here. This property had been meant to be the foundation of a shared life with someone I trusted. Instead, it had become a battlefield in a war of justice and accountability. Now, it would serve a different purpose, funding a new chapter of my life and possibly helping other women avoid the pain I had experienced. As I locked the front door for what I expected would be the last time, my phone buzzed with a text message. It was from a number I didn't recognize. Saw the for sale sign going up at your house today. Heard what happened with your ex. Their loss. If you ever want to grab coffee with someone who appreciates a woman who knows her way around real estate law, let me know. Michael, your neighbor 3 doors down. I smiled despite myself. Perhaps the universe had a sense of humor after all. 3 months later, I sat in my new condo overlooking the Charles River, reviewing documents for the newly established Financial Defense Alliance. The house had sold for almost $100,000 above asking price in a bidding war, providing me with a substantial profit even after paying off the mortgage. Ryan had disappeared from Boston entirely. According to Danielle's contacts, he had taken the job in Hartford but kept it a deliberately low profile. Whether he had truly reformed or was simply regrouping before targeting his next victim remained to be seen. Either way, the network of women he had wronged was now vigilant and connected, ready to sound the alarm at the first sign of his return to his old patterns. As for me, I had emerged from the experience changed but not broken. More cautious perhaps, but also more confident in my ability to protect myself and help others. The engagement ring Ryan had given me had been sold. The proceeds donated to a women's shelter. The wedding dress had gone to a consignment shop, purchased by a bride who would hopefully find the happiness that had eluded me. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was Victoria. Just checking in, she said when I answered. How's the new place? Perfect, I replied, looking around at the space I had created entirely on my own terms. Smaller than the house, but it feels more like home already. And the FDA work? Challenging but rewarding. We've already helped 3 women recover funds from financial predators. Not as completely as I did, but enough to give them some closure. Victoria was quiet for a moment before speaking again. You know, Allison, when you first came to me with this situation, I was concerned about how it might affect you not just professionally, but personally. These kinds of betrayals can harden people. I considered her words. I won't pretend it didn't change me, but I don't think it hardened me. It clarified things. How so? I used to think that love and trust meant being willing to override your instincts to silence that little voice of doubt when it whispered warnings. Now I understand that real trust, whether in relationships or anywhere else, has to include trusting yourself first. That's quite profound, Victoria observed. And professionally, has this experience changed how you approach your work? I thought about the real estate closings and property disputes that had once been the focus of my practice. They still interested me, but something had shifted. I'm thinking of developing a specialization, I said, in cases involving property disputes between unmarried partners or fraud victims. There's a real need for expertise in that area, and I have relevant experience. Victoria laughed. That's one way to put it. Well, when you're ready to discuss how that might fit into your work at the firm, my door is always open. After we hung up, I walked to the window of my new home, watching the boats on the river, the people strolling along the embankment. Somewhere out there, other Ryans were targeting other women, spinning webs of deceit around real estate deals, investment opportunities, and shared dreams. But now there was also me, and Danielle, and a growing network of women who understood these schemes and knew how to fight back. We couldn't prevent every betrayal, but we could ensure that fewer predators walked away unscathed. The sun was setting over the river, painting the water with streaks of gold and crimson. I thought about the lien I had placed on Ryan's property, the legal maneuver that had ultimately brought him to his knees. It had been a technical process, just words on paper filed at a courthouse. But those words had carried the weight of justice, the power to right a wrong that might otherwise have gone unchallenged. In the end, that was what I had reclaimed, not just money or property, but power. The power to stand up for myself. The power to help others do the same. And perhaps most importantly, the power to trust my own judgment again. As darkness fell over Boston, I turned away from the window and back to the documents spread across my desk, the framework for helping the next woman who found herself betrayed by someone she trusted. There was still work to be done. and I was exactly the right person to do it.